What if the most private moment in a celebrity's life suddenly became the most emotional story the world has seen this year? That question erupted across fan communities the moment news began spreading that Song Hye Kyo had welcomed a baby boy. Within minutes, the conversation moved beyond the birth itself and focused on something few people expected to witness so openly: the reaction of Lee Min-ho. What happened in those first moments after the birth, according to people close to the situation, left fans deeply moved and completely surprised. Because the man known for his composed presence on screen was suddenly showing a level of emotion rarely seen in public. The story began quietly in the early hours of the morning. Inside a private medical facility, surrounded by a small group of trusted doctors and family members, Song Hye Kyo reportedly went into labor after months of anticipation and speculation surrounding her pregnancy. For fans, the pregnancy itself had already been one of the most discussed developments in Korean entertainment. From the moment the news first emerged, every detail surrounding the couple had attracted global attention. Their relationship had fascinated audiences for years. Both were icons of the Korean drama industry. Both had built international reputations through performances that defined an era of storytelling. And now their personal lives were entering a completely new chapter. As labor progressed inside the hospital, those present described the atmosphere as both tense and hopeful. Birth, even in the calmest circumstances, carries an emotional weight that transforms everyone involved. For Lee Min-ho, witnesses say the hours leading up to the birth were filled with quiet anticipation. He remained close to Song Hye Kyo throughout the process, speaking gently and offering reassurance whenever possible. But it was the moment the baby finally arrived that changed everything. When doctors confirmed the birth of a healthy baby boy, the room reportedly filled with a kind of silence that often follows life-changing news. A few seconds passed before the baby's first cry echoed through the space. For parents, that sound is unforgettable. It marks the beginning of an entirely new life. And according to people who witnessed the moment, Lee Min-ho's reaction was immediate and deeply emotional. Observers say he initially stood still, almost frozen by the reality of what had just happened. Then, as the baby's cry continued, his composure began to break. Those who know him describe Lee Min-ho as someone who rarely shows overwhelming emotion in public. Even during interviews or major career milestones, he typically maintains a calm and controlled demeanor. But this moment was different. Witnesses say he lowered his head briefly, covering his face with his hands as the realization settled in. It was not dramatic. It was not loud. But the emotion was unmistakable. When nurses carefully placed the newborn into Song Hye Kyo's arms, Lee Min-ho reportedly stepped closer, still processing what he was seeing. The image of mother and child together seemed to shift something inside him. One hospital staff member later described the moment simply: he looked like someone who had just discovered a completely new version of himself. After a few moments, he leaned forward and gently touched the baby's tiny hand. The gesture was quiet but powerful. And, according to those present, it was at that point that tears finally appeared in his eyes. Not the kind of tears that fall during sadness, but the kind that come when something overwhelming and beautiful suddenly becomes real. For many fans who later heard about the moment, that reaction became the most touching part of the story, because it revealed a side of Lee Min-ho rarely visible to the public. The actor known for portraying confident heroes and charismatic leaders on screen was suddenly just a new father standing beside the woman he loves, witnessing the beginning of his child's life. Meanwhile, Song Hye Kyo herself reportedly remained calm and focused during those first moments after the birth. Despite the exhaustion that naturally follows labor, she was described as radiant, holding the baby close while quietly speaking to him. Doctors confirmed that both mother and child were healthy. But beyond medical updates, what captured people's attention was the emotional atmosphere surrounding the birth. The room was not filled with celebration in the traditional sense. Instead, witnesses described something quieter: a sense of awe, as if everyone present understood that they were witnessing a moment far more meaningful than any public announcement. Within hours, news of the birth began reaching entertainment circles. Although the couple had attempted to maintain privacy during the pregnancy, word spread quickly. Fans around the world began sharing messages of congratulations. Some expressed disbelief that the two stars they had watched for years were now beginning a new chapter as parents. Others focused on the emotional reaction described by witnesses. For many supporters, the idea of Lee Min-ho being overwhelmed by the birth of his son felt both surprising and deeply human. Actors often appear larger than life on screen. Their roles portray strength, control, and confidence. But moments like this remind audiences that behind the performances are individuals experiencing the same life-changing milestones as everyone else. The arrival of a child has a way of transforming even the most composed personalities. And in this case, it revealed a side of Lee Min-ho that fans had rarely seen before. As news continues to circulate, the story has become more than just a birth announcement. It has become a glimpse into a deeply personal moment shared by two people who have spent much of their lives under public scrutiny. Now they stand at the beginning of something entirely new. Not another film project, not another drama series, but the unpredictable journey of parenthood. And somewhere inside a quiet hospital room, a newborn baby boy has already changed the lives of Song Hye Kyo and Lee Min-ho forever. The cameras were not there. The public did not witness it directly. But the emotion described by those present has already turned that moment into a story that fans will remember for years. Because sometimes the most powerful scenes in life are not performed on a stage or captured by a script. They simply happen in the quiet space where a new life begins. And as the hours passed after the birth, the quiet hospital room slowly transformed into the center of a story that would ripple far beyond its walls. Inside that room, the atmosphere had changed. The tension that once filled the air during the long hours of waiting had been replaced with a fragile calm. Nurses moved softly through the space. Doctors offered final reassurances. The newborn rested in the gentle warmth of his mother's arms. And standing beside the bed, still absorbing the reality of what had just happened, was Lee Min-ho. Witnesses say that even after the initial emotional moment, he remained unusually quiet, not distant, not overwhelmed in a negative way, but reflective, as if he understood that everything about his life had just shifted in a matter of seconds. Those who were present described how he kept looking back and forth between the baby and Song Hye Kyo, almost as though he was trying to fully comprehend the scene in front of him. For years, both actors had lived under the constant rhythm of the entertainment industry. Filming schedules, script readings, promotional tours, award ceremonies, public appearances. Their lives had been defined by cameras, audiences, and carefully managed moments. But this moment was different. There were no directors, no scripts, no second takes. Just a newborn child and two parents stepping into an entirely new chapter of their lives. Hospital staff later described a particularly touching moment that occurred shortly after the baby had been cleaned and wrapped. A nurse gently asked Lee Min-ho if he wanted to hold his son. For a brief second, witnesses say he hesitated, not out of fear, but out of the kind of cautious respect many new parents feel when facing such a fragile life for the first time. The nurse guided him carefully, slowly placing the baby into his arms. And as he looked down at the tiny face resting against the blanket, something remarkable happened. The actor who had spent decades mastering emotional control in front of millions of viewers suddenly seemed completely unguarded. According to those in the room, he whispered something so softly that only a few words could be heard. He said that the baby was smaller than he imagined, but somehow felt bigger than the entire world. It was a simple observation, yet the way he said it revealed how deeply the moment had affected him. Meanwhile, Song Hye Kyo watched quietly from the hospital bed. Exhausted but calm, she reportedly smiled as she observed Lee Min-ho holding the child for the first time. That small exchange between them carried an intimacy rarely visible to the public. For fans who had followed their journey through rumors, speculation, and confirmation of their relationship, the scene felt almost symbolic. Two of Korea's most recognizable stars standing together in a quiet room, no longer defined by fame or celebrity, but by the simple reality of becoming parents. Outside the hospital, however, the world was already beginning to react. News of the birth spread quickly through entertainment circles. Messages of congratulations began appearing from colleagues, directors, and fellow actors who had worked with both stars over the years. Some described the moment as the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. Others expressed admiration for the way the couple had navigated their personal life while maintaining successful careers. Fans, meanwhile, focused on the emotional details of Lee Min-ho's reaction. For many people, the image of the usually composed actor quietly wiping away tears resonated deeply, because it revealed something profoundly human. Fame often creates a sense of distance between celebrities and the public. Actors appear larger than life on screen. Their characters perform heroic acts, dramatic sacrifices, and grand romantic gestures. But moments like this remind audiences that behind every famous name is a person experiencing the same milestones that shape ordinary lives. The arrival of a child. The overwhelming realization of responsibility. The quiet joy of seeing a new life begin. As the first day of the baby's life continued, doctors confirmed once again that both mother and child were healthy. The hospital gradually returned to its usual rhythm. But for Lee Min-ho and Song Hye Kyo, nothing about their lives would ever feel quite the same again. Because somewhere between the first cry of their son and the quiet moment when he was placed into his father's arms, a transformation had already taken place. They were no longer just two actors admired by millions. They were now parents. And although the world would continue watching their careers with fascination, the most important story in their lives had just begun far away from the cameras. A story that will unfold not through scripts or performances, but through the everyday moments of raising a child. The late nights, the first steps, the laughter that fills a home when a family grows. For fans around the world, the news of the birth will remain an unforgettable headline. But for Lee Min-ho and Song Hye Kyo, the moment will always be something much quieter. A memory of a hospital room, a newborn's first cry, and the realization that the most important role of their lives had just begun.